Hello, my name is EC Darlingbond, and I am the marketing director for Ronin Theatre Collaborative. And whoever you are listening to UPSTAGED, the official podcast for Ronin Theatre Collaborative. On today's episode, we are interviewing our outgoing artistic director, Keath Hall, about his swan song, our latest production, a Klingon Hamlet. That's right. It's Hamlet, set in the world of Star Trek with Klingons, bat'leths, and phasers aplenty. Now, Keath is the director for the show. He is also co-adaptator of the script alongside myself. He is also playing Hamlet here in his final production here at Ronin Theatre Collaborative. Can't wait to hear about more on the pod with him, coming to you after this break. Good morning, Keith.
I see your bookshelf is as big as mine.
Yes, the only problem is I only have the one. There are books scattered all around, inside, and beneath my desk.
Ah, excellent. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Good. Just came from a meeting with the actor who's interested in season next year.
Ooh. Did it go well?
Yeah, he was in Secret Garden, so he's just interested in what's going on next season and so on and so forth. All that lovely things you get to do when you're running a company. Everybody wants a little chat time.
Well, speaking of chat time, we have a hard 30 here, so we'll keep it to it so you can enjoy the rest of your day. But first of all, welcome to the inaugural podcast of Upstaged, the only and official podcast for Ronin Theatre Company. You are our first guest.
Excellent. Very cool. Do you guys have a logo yet?
Not yet. We are working on it. This is very much a working on it as we go. We are slowly replacing the ship as it is sinking.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But Keith, how are you today otherwise?
Good. You know, it's a Saturday. I had a meeting earlier, like I said, and then I get to go to a fundraiser after this in the late afternoon. And just working on my lines for Hamlet.
Same here. Putting the fun in fundraiser, of course. But so we're going to talk a little bit about the show today. First things first, what is Hamlet?
Apparently, it's a play by many people think William Shakespeare. There has been some disputations here and there. For me, Hamlet is sort of this universal story we all have where we have to sort of run up against our own mortality and the ideas of how hard and difficult and stressful and emotional life can be, which is kind of why I think sort of there's a little bit of Hamlet in everybody, which is why the show, has survived this long and keeps getting retold in so many cool different ways.
Nice. And for those who don't know why I ask what is Hamlet, it is because our upcoming show, running May 22nd through June 29th, though at differing locations, we'll get into it, is going to be a Klingon Hamlet. So I guess that begs the question, Keith, what are Klingons?
Oh, I think you know better than most, but Klingons are a race of people in the Star Trek series, and they've always been a sort of a consistent people that get brought up and used throughout all the different variations of Star Trek. They're a warrior people in that show, and so they're very much like the Vikings. They've borrowed from a lot of other different warrior cultures, including, I think, some native tribes, the Japanese, feudal culture and stuff like that, which I think makes them just a really cool sort of creation of somebody's mind of what sort of a warrior culture is in comparison to the rest of everybody else. So they're kind of cool. They can be very emotional. They have huge outbursts of anger and rage and very passionate people, which I think is sort of neat. Which is why I think they're a fun culture to explore for this, because in some ways Hamlet is a revenge story, a revenge play, and so I think using the Klingons in this sense ties in a bunch of people, gets a bunch of people to look at a classic piece of culture and literature and see just how flexible Hamlet is and how much it can stretch across the centuries, across cultures, across all sorts of things. So that's a Klingon in a nutshell.
Thank you. Well, with that being said, I think it's best that we describe a little bit about what happens in Hamlet. So we'll keep it to just the cliff notes of Hamlet is the Prince of Denmark, in our version, the Prince of Kronos, the Klingon homeworld. And his father has recently died, apparently in his sleep after being stung by a snake of some sort. And his mom has remarried his uncle, and his uncle has become the king of, in our version, Kronos, in the play Denmark. So yes, for those at home, it's the Lion King, a little bit like the Lion King.
A lot of it like the Lion King.
A lot of it is like the Lion King. We have I don't know if we have as much of a positive opinion on the Timon and Pumbaa that is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. But Hamlet is then visited by the ghost of his father, who tells him, hey, your uncle, who is also now your stepfather, don't think about it, is now the king and is actually my murderer, and I need you to avenge him if I'm ever to find peace in the afterlife. Maybe. There's always that big asterisk with Shakespeare plays of how literal it's supposed to be. Like, okay, does the ghost exist? Yes or no? Mm-hmm. Is the ghost trustworthy? Yes or no? And the fun thing about Hamlet is that he also asks these same questions. Is the ghost real? Is he telling the truth, or am I going mad? Now, in the context of the Klingons, I know you were talking about, how easily they give into just these huge emotional outbursts and honor. What was the moment that made you think, Klingons and Hamlet, that needs to happen?
Well, I was raised on Star Trek: The Next Generation by my mother. So that was sort of my surrogate babysitter. Captain Picard was, in fact, sort of an uncle who watched over me every now and then.
Famously well known for loving children, Captain Picard.
Yeah, of course. What a warm uncle he was. But no, I was looking at the season, and I love, when I was picking the season for Ronin this year, I love to include classics, but what I love the most about some sort of dusting off an old piece of literature or culture is making it fresh and showing everybody how it can relate to circumstances beyond what it was written for. That's sort of the beauty of Shakespeare, is his universality. So, and we like to do fun things historically at Ronin. We did Dracula and Tombstone. We've done.
I've never heard of this play.
Well,
that is an inside joke. I was in the play.
Yeah. So we like to do fun spins on things, and this had actually been sort of proposed to me by a friend of mine. It just mentioned it in passing, and I sort of latched onto it. So I just sort of ran with it. I played with it in my mind for a while, and I thought about, well, who would take that seriously? Who would want to come see that? And then the more I thought about it and the spaces that we were going to do it in and the people that I know we had available to us, I immediately thought of you, Eric, because of your vast knowledge of Star Trek, because of our time on Lonesome West that we did together, that it just seemed like a natural fit. And it's really amazing to me how much it's come together, considering how difficult it is to create a science fiction stage adaptation. There's so many things involved, but every step of the way, when we've run into a wall or I've just sort of been concerned about something, somebody has said, well, here, let me lend a hand in the process. I've had a student come in and help out with 3D printing some of the props. We have an excellent costume designer who's stepping it up and building so many things for this production. Wes, who's playing Claudius in our production, has agreed to step in and help with makeup. And it's been a really amazing process with how excited everybody is about it all together. And the idea of bringing these two sort of fandoms together, bringing the Star Trek people and the Shakespeare people, some of them probably overlap, but bringing those two groups together and letting them sort of enjoy a performance has been really fun.
Yeah. Now, I know this, but you're a huge Shakespeare fan. When did that start for you?
You know, it's interesting. When I was in high school, I was the lighting guy. That was sort of my job. My brother had played Stanley when they did Streetcar at my high school. And he was more the actor. But then I was in the midst of college. I was working on my degree in history. And I love history, but I got sucked into this guerrilla Shakespeare company in San Diego called the Poor Players. It was run by my buddy, Richard Baird. He had just done Hamlet, and I'd never connected with Shakespeare as much before. I'd read it a little bit as a kid, but I was much more of a Tolkien fan than anything else at this point. But I saw his Hamlet. It was brilliant. I saw it twice, and it was very guerrilla. They were in basically a coffee shop that had been converted into a theater. Everybody was wearing modern clothes, and he did the to be or not to be speech in the dark, just pouring a gas can over himself, which is interesting because if you know the play, the original person who Hamlet's based on actually did set fire to himself. So that's sort of where I started. I joined that company. They called me up one day and said, this person dropped out, you were interested. Did you want to come join us? So I did 17 Shakespeare productions with them. And I sort of haven't quit since. It's just been sort of a passion that I developed. It was weird that it happened in college and the way that it did, but it's been great. It brings me joy. I get to create art. And like I said, I love history. I love literature, and it lets me sort of try and connect these things that I'm very passionate about and show people how they can also relate to them.
Okay. Well, in that case, so we've co-adapted this script together, what for you, and there is, just so I'm doing my due diligence, there is the 1990s script, Hamlet, Prince of Kronos, or Prince of the Klingons, that came out. I did very sparingly look at it because I didn't want it to influence my cuts too much when we were adapting the script. What to you was the biggest challenge in adapting Hamlet for the Klingons?
Well, for me, the hardest part is we've edited it down to 100 minutes. Hamlet, if you do it sort of uncut, which I don't think was ever done until Brana did it in the 2000s or something like that. I don't think it was ever done that way because, I think different people would come in and play different parts, and different parts would be different size. But unedited, the script that we have is like 4 hours long. And I was concerned about, the attention span of a modern audience. I mean, I'll sit through an amazing 4-hour Hamlet and I'll be perfectly fine. But, audiences, our seats aren't as comfortable as I'd like them to be at some of the venues. So, that gets tough for an audience. Additionally, we're trying to bring in some folks who are Star Trek fans and some younger folks who are hip and excited about this experience. And this may be their first Shakespeare ever. So what I don't want to do is bore them or make it seem too long. So the hardest part for me, to answer your question, was cutting down an amazing 4-hour story to just that 100 minutes, because cutting away sections of it was like cutting away skin from my arm. You know what I mean? It was painful to do, but I felt necessary. And I think between the two of us, we managed to come up with a really good cutting that tells the story, adds in some fun Star Trek elements, because we have added in a few bits here and there, and some references and things like that I think makes for being true to Hamlet. It's still Hamlet, but also at the same time puts it somewhere and gives us a reference for what the world is. So that was the hardest part to me, was cutting the script, actually, because I did cut a lot.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. There were some parts I found the most difficult thing was trying to translate references from Shakespearean times that have kind of, for lack of a better term, worn away as the years have passed, like Ophelia's whole segment about the flowers. Now, as someone who has a German grandmother who was very clear and specific to me about what flowers meant and why you had to deliver them in a certain way, it was like, oh, okay, I vaguely understand what's going on. But to, let's say, a common person, they're going to be like, great, why are we giving out flowers and why is everyone so upset about this? This seems pleasant.
Yeah, I think it's important that we didn't want to pull them out of the world that we're creating too. So the idea is this is a very revenge-centered Klingon Hamlet. So, and it's also a modern version that we're doing. So all our references, a lot of them are stuff that people can relate to. Like a lot of the jokes we come up with in the show are, you know, about our time right now. So it's important, I think, that we cut away some of the archaic language that is going to interfere with the world we're trying to create.
Yeah. Trying to just talk about briefly of like, hey, yes, there were a lot of references to the Protestant Catholic divide, which is so central to that original Hamlet that it's just like, okay, but how do we do that with Klingons?
Some of that unfortunately does get sacrificed in the cutting of it, but that's okay. I think that what's nice about Hamlet is, like, you know, it's not like it's a play that never gets done. So this is just another version. So if you want to see that, if you love that Catholic Protestant divide, there will be another Hamlet that definitely tells that story.
Yeah, honestly, Brana should redo it again. So he did it in 1996. He should do it again, but this time in Belfast. That way
there you go.
Everything together.
Well, I mean, if Ian McClelland can do it at 88, then anybody can do it whenever they want. That's the new rule.
That is true. So you are director, you are the star of the show, you are Hamlet, you are the co-adaptor. What has been the most difficult part in preparing for the role? Famously easy role, Hamlet, you know.
Well, you know, we talk about the world we're creating. It's just different, right? Klingon culture is a little different, even, you know, and that's what happens whenever you change the setting for any Shakespeare, right? There's certain things that work really well with the script, and certain things that, you know, you kind of have to either figure out or adapt or make things work. So that's, for me, been the hardest part, is because we've trimmed the show down so much, there's only so much Hamlet you can cut. So even though I've had some massive cuts to my language, it's still a lot of me on the stage. The breaks that were there before, that Shakespeare built in for the actor to have in Hamlet, there's a lot less of them. They're a lot shorter. And I would say that's true for everybody who's acting in the show. The fury of our production is quick. So I think the hardest part for me is some of the emotional changes turning on a dime, which I think will be great for the audience to see. But for me, figuring those out and making them happen in real time has been the hardest part. There's a lot of emotional things going on for Hamlet. If you don't hit those things right, he really does just come off as a jerk.
What has it been? I think we have kept a running count of like, okay, how many times is Hamlet being awful to women in his life? Thankfully, there are just the two who are named in the play.
Yeah.
But
it's hard because but you don't want to apologize for the character ever. He's being 100% ruthless at times, but you do need to understand where it's coming from.
yeah, I think something that works for a lot of Shakespeare's plays, especially when we are readapting them, or we are bringing them into a different context, is the fact that so many of his protagonists, like I would say Hamlet, Macbeth, definitely, anyone in the comedies like Viola, is that there is always a fish out of water element. The main character who we are following always feels like they themselves are out of place with whatever is happening around them. So I would say that that does work on a very, meta scholarly level of just like, yeah, of course Hamlet feels weird among Klingons, but Hamlet also felt weird among just being around other Danes in the original context.
And I will say my Hamlet is probably even weirder than most.
All right, if we're talking about other adaptations, I know we talked about the Mel Gibson one when we were discussing like the fight scenes and choreography. When you go over the many adaptations of Hamlet, what would you say is one that works best for you?
I like to pull from different versions, really. Like Brana has some really beautiful scenes in it, like when he's left alone after everybody's celebrating and leaving, the cannons are being fired and the confetti's falling, and he's all by himself for "Oh, that this too solid flesh." That's a really beautiful moment that they've set up there for him. I love Derek Jacobi's Claudius. I love that Claudius that is very like direct, coherent, and just powerful and strong. And I feel like Jacobi's is that. Mel Gibson, whatever you want to say about the whole show, I think when he's connecting with people on that, he's really great as Hamlet. I love his fight at the end, like I said, because he's allowing the character to come out and develop through the fights, which is what we're trying to do with our production as well. But Ian Holm as Polonius, I mean, that's just great casting, right? You can't beat that. The Mel Gibson one. So and it's interesting because for this show, because it's Hamlet, so I didn't actually go out and watch a ton of Hamlets before we started working on this one, because I had seen them all before. Just because that's what I like to do. I'd seen David Tennant's, and there's things that I like in that one as well. That I'd already sort of taken probably some even without knowing it, and sort of formulated our production and the storytelling I like from the Shakespeare perspective. But I mean, what's really great is I take those ideas and then I put them in a room full of artists. You know what I mean? I bring you into my ideas, and the show takes a different shape for the better. It evolves and becomes this bigger piece of work that everybody's sort of contributing to, and it just takes on a life of its own. So this production, there's certain scenes that I had no idea that's exactly how they were going to go down. But now that I see it, now that I see the people who are making that happen, I to some extent, I still manipulate, I still sort of touch it up, but it's sort of become its own beast on its own too, because of everybody working together.
Oh, that's lovely. Oh boy, Keith, I always love talking to you because I always feel like I'm learning.
Well,
In
the same thing.
way, not like, here we go again. It's another lecture from the hall.
I always look at art as there's people have amazing things to say, but you should always take what you can work with. If something doesn't make sense to you, push it away till it makes sense later, and just use what you can make sense. You know what I mean? Bringing you in, Eric, was really easy to do because I know you're such a great person to work with. People love working with you. You're very funny. And your notes that you've been giving, because you are the assistant director for the show. I can't remember if we said that or not. The notes you've been giving, I think just we're complementing each other very well. You're picking up the slack where I'm dropping things off, maybe, and it's all staying to the form that I think that we're both happy with.
Oh yeah. Well, my directorial experience was so limited that it was just one of those things. When you offered the role, I was so excited about it because it's like, great, now I can apprentice underneath my friend and someone who I admire and learn how to do this directing thing. Because there are times when I'm just thinking to myself, like, oh God, what am I going to say about this? But talking about Star Trek, so you mentioned TNG was kind of that cornerstone for you growing up, and you had said to me in the past that that was the show you watched a lot with your mom, correct?
Yeah, she's I'm sort of dedicating this particular one of the reasons I also chose the Klingon Hamlet is because my mom's in a mental care facility for Alzheimer's, and I'm sort of dedicating this show to her. She's sort of the person, when I was in second grade, she handed me Jurassic Park. I was a very sort of sad, lonely kid who didn't have much to latch onto at the time, and she handed me a book that really opened up my world. Well, you laugh at that. Afterwards, she handed me like Pet Cemetery and some other stuff. So, but
Your mom is hardcore. I'm just gonna
say. She really gave me a passion for reading and storytelling, and it turned into what it was. That's the reason I was pursuing a degree in history initially, is because I love storytelling from history. I hadn't fully sort of conceptualized that yet. And literature and theater, they all sort of work together when you're doing something like Shakespeare. It all sort of becomes different tools and instruments you use to tell a story. So yeah, my mom got me started with Star Trek when I was growing up. She had a whole room dedicated to Star Trek with the figures, the batleths, and all that stuff. She was really into it. And I watched some Deep Space Nine, some Voyager. She loved all those shows. But yeah, Next Generation, Picard, that's sort of where my grounding is. Whereas I know for you, like it's probably almost all of them now, right?
Yeah, it's almost all of them. My family, I've told you about it before, but I grew up in this UFO religion to where they had very hard opinions and they believed that Star Trek was spiritually inspired. And it was almost sacrilegious that I watched anything but the original series.
Mm.
That was my rebellion. I'm just like, I don't know, Picard's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, that's intense. I mean, I think there's something magical about the first series, and I think there's something magical about all of them, actually. The fact that they ran as long as they did, and the story, the outrageous stories that they would tell in just one episode. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
if you had to recommend to our audience an episode of Star Trek to watch, what would it be?
oh man. I always loved the ones with Q in them. He was just such a entertaining, charismatic character. I loved how he didn't play. That's sort of, I mean, if I had to say where my inspiration is coming from for this Hamlet, it's sort of the irreverence of Q. Like everybody's being very serious about stuff, and he's just there to party with his mariachi music and random girls appearing left and right. Yeah, I mean, I actually really love that he sort of is there on the last episode of the final season. I think that one where they're like talking in the court scene, and Picard comes back with the Shakespeare quotes, which I think is also, in addition to Undiscovered Country, is one of the things that helped inspire me about this. So I would say, yeah, the last episode of Next Generation, when Q and him are putting sort of the human race on trial. I thought that was I can't even remember the name of that episode. You probably can. But
All good things.
Yeah, all good things. Thank you. But yeah, that's sort of what I like about Star Trek is that it can just do so many crazy things. And it sort of works for Hamlet, because in Hamlet, there's so many crazy things that happen. Not in our version, but, Hamlet gets kidnapped by pirates. And the audience is
just...
The audience is just supposed to, like, accept it, you know?
Yeah. Shakespeare, utilizing his favorite trick of, I will just describe something that happened off stage and we'll just go with it. But
go with it.
Keith, speaking of all good things coming to an end, this is your final show with Ronin as artistic director before going off to Southwest Shakespeare. You know, did this feel like, when the opportunity came, did you know that this was going to be your final show and so that's influenced it at all? Or was it just, if I'm going to go out, this is the one I want to go out with?
I knew I had not, the Southwest Shakespeare offering me the artistic director job was nowhere in my frame of thought when I had picked this season. Just no, it came out of sort of the blue, and it's very lovely that it happened, because I think there are things about me that can serve that company. And the reason I said yes is because I feel like that company is a large part of the Phoenix culture. It's a huge part. And I want to make sure that it's doing the things it needs to do to be a good company that people want to work at, and that it's creating the art that needs to be created with these works of literature. And, you know, I love Ronin. I built it with Cody and Lee Cooley and some other people from the ground up. But 5 years, you know, the average artistic director job is supposed to be, you know, 4 to 5 years. You have artistic directors that are around for 20 and 30, and that's grand if it works for that company. But I think it's time for a couple things. It's time for Cody Golder to get his stamp on how he thinks things should be. He's watched me do it. There's probably some good things and some bad things he'll take from my tenure. But I think the company is ready for the next evolution, whatever that's going to be. And I think Cody's done a really good job of gathering, and he's very good at this, gathering the right kind of people around him that are going to help push the company forward and make it something different and special. You know what I mean? I think we had an amazing 5 years with me there, and I think I'm still going to be around. You know, I'm not dying, but but I think it's good to have some change and to shake things up a little bit. And I'm excited to see what they do. So it's a little bittersweet to be doing Hamlet, but when I was made the offer, I knew Hamlet was sort of my baby of the season. And I certainly didn't want to leave the company and be like, hey guys, I chose this absurd setting for this incredibly difficult play. Have at it. You know what I mean? I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make sure I left the company doing something artistically I'm very proud of, and that leaving the company hopefully with a lot of money to continue to be successful for next season, and see just put that little final mark on things to say this is the end of Keith for now, at least, and the beginning of Cody. And it's good because he's got this time to switch over and become artistic director, to settle things out and start picking out his next season. And I think it's good timing, to be honest with you. If I'd have waited till the end of the season to switch over, it could have been a little more problematic. But now he's getting to steer the end of this season and figure out how all the business aspects and all that stuff that I'm handing over to him work. And that'll help him inform to make really good decisions next year too. So it is a bit fortuitous, I think, that it worked out like this, but it was by no means planned that way.
No worries. Keith, if your tenure at Ronin is any sign, I know that Southwest Shakespeare is going to be really, really well off, and you're going to make a lot of people happy, because I love working at Ronin, and a large part of that is to you. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks. It's nice to hear that. Everybody's excited right now. We'll see how long that lasts. You know, we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm excited that we're doing some interesting shows that I think surprised people, like 1984. I think that surprised some people when that popped up in the season. So hopefully, once again, shaking things up, but in a good way. Hopefully, we're going to be making some good choices there.
Yeah, like Star Trek predicting the cell phone. Hopefully, your inaugural play of 1984 does not predict anything else. Anyway, so just to finish up, Klingon Hamlet, we're opening at the Irish Cultural Center from May 22nd to May 25th. 5th.
There is a bar there, folks.
There is a bar there. Spock Tales will be available. Then we are moving to the Beaver Street Theater in collaboration with the folks at at Flagstaff Shakes.
Just lovely people. If you guys have ever seen a show at Flagstaff Shakespeare Festival, lovely people who love Shakespeare in all its forms, and they just have a terrific audience up there too.
Yeah, and that's going to be May 30th and through May 31st. I may have that
through June 1st.
Through June 1st, exactly.
Friday,
yeah.
Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, May 30th through June 1st. We have 3 events at Phoenix Fan Fusion coming up.
Super exciting. Super exciting. We have 3 panels. We'll be there probably for most of the con, handing out flyers and talking to people. But the Friday we'll have a fight choreography panel. The Saturday we'll do a chunk of performance. And then Sunday we'll be doing a makeup and costume sort of panel on how we did Klingon Hamlet. Super exciting.
And then we get 1 week off before we start up again at Stage Left in Glendale, Arizona. And that will be the 20th through the 29th of June, ending our run.
Yeah, Stage Left Productions has been a great partner with us over the years, helping us produce shows in their spots. Cody Dull, different Cody, if you know, he's very smart in how he runs his company, and they pick some amazing shows.
Yeah, it's going to be a great time. Keath, thank you so much for meeting up with me this afternoon. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day and have a good time at the fundraiser. Live long and prosper. And kapla.
And kapla. All right. Talk to you later, sir.